In this video, we will be starting the development process for the Surface Duo. So what I'm going to be doing is starting the video by first showing you what you're going to have to do on your Surface Duo in order to enable development. I'm going to be going off of how it's done on most Android devices. So this is a live video. So be patient if we have to struggle through some issues. And then once we have it set up for development, we will then switch over to my computer, which is a Surface Book 3. And we'll open up Visual Studio there, Visual Studio 2019. And we will then show you how to set up. We'll set up a very basic application, deploy it to the Surface Duo, running on the Surface Duo, debug it on the Surface Duo, and just show the first sort of setup. Once we're done with that, we'll then start showing you some techniques that we can use to basically allow for that sort of like split screen view so that we can utilize both screens. Now caveat, there is an SDK that Microsoft has created, and they do have controls that they have in place for doing this. But those controls are based on a technology called Xamarin Forms. For this demo that we're going to use, I'm not going to use Xamarin Forms. Now, I am going to do one with Xamarin Forms as well. But in this one, I actually want to try out this new technology called Platform.Uno, which leverages the old Universal Windows Platform programming model and uses that to create Android-based applications. The value proposition to doing that is that the old Windows or Universal Windows Platform programming model provides a lot more capabilities than the Xamarin Forms does in terms of drawing, right? So it gives you more options. And for the kind of application that we're going to be doing, which is a basic application, the kinds of applications we're doing, which are basic applications, there's no need for us to go the route of Xamarin Forms. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is to basically unlock the operating system for development. And typically that's done by going to About, right? And then going to Build and clicking multiple times. I think it's 7 or 8 times. So I've done that, and I'm just going to enter the pin. Once development options are enabled, you then go over to the system option, click on that, and if you get over here, you should now see this developer options setting, right? Which is right there. And then you can click in here and you can set up whatever it is you need to set up in terms of developer activities. So 2 things that you're gonna have to do. One thing that I do is optional, but it's something that I always do is I enable stay awake, right? So what this will do is that while you're debugging and while you're plugged into a USB, while you're charging, the device will not basically go to sleep, so you won't get like the lock screen. This is really good because typically you're going to be plugged into your computer and it is going to be charging, and you don't want to keep having to basically sign in as you're doing development work. The other thing that you need to enable is USB debugging, right? Right here under the debugging, right? And when you enable that, what it'll allow you to do is from your Windows device or from your development device, you can actually run debug and it'll deploy the code, install the code on your phone, and you'll be able to run it on your phone. So with those two things enabled, we are basically all set, and we can go on to the next phase of the setup. And the next thing that we would need to do is basically plug a USB Type C cable into the application, into the device, and obviously plug it into the computer. All right, so we are now on my computer and we will now start Visual Studio. And we will create a new project. So what this is going to do is create a cross-platform app using the Uno platform. As mentioned, the Uno platform is basically a development platform that leverages the old Universal Windows platform API technology, so you can use it. It's very similar to Xamarin Forms, which is a standard way of doing this. And I'm not suggesting that you use Xamarin Forms or use this over Xamarin Forms. This just has its advantages, and Xamarin Forms has its advantages. So once we're set up like this on the computer screen, you should see something that basically says to allow USB debugging. Okay, it'll show up on your phone screen, pop up, and there's a way to actually cast this. I'm going to try to cast this, see if it's possible to do. Boom, there we go. Okay. So what you're looking at here now is what's showing up on my phone. And as you can see, it simply pops up, and basically you can simply allow it. Okay. And we are all set. And of course, as discussed previously, there is there's the common notifications that keep showing up. So once you allow that, that should show up in your list of devices up here. So you see how it says Pixel Pi? I can click that and I can actually click Microsoft Surface Duo Android 10 API 29, right? So you're essentially all set now, and you basically have your application ready to go. So what you're able to do now is deploy to the Android, to your Surface Duo, and run on your Surface Duo, which is what we're going to do now. Before we do that, we're actually going to remove some things from this. I'm going to remove the iOS simply because we're not using it right now. Remove the Mac OS. Again, because this is similar to Xamarin, like Xamarin, you have the ability to basically create an application that you create once, and it will run on your Droid, it'll run on your iOS, it'll run on Windows as a universal Windows platform, which you see here, UWP. The cool thing about Xamarin Forms is that it will also run as a web assembly, right? So you can actually also run this application that we're creating as a website. So that's the value proposition for now, right? That website component to it. Of course, we're not using it here, we're using it like that, but be that as it may. So to basically get our application working, let's go ahead and let's open the actual main window. So we're actually not going to be operating on the Android or anything else. We basically operate on this shared project. In here is where all the application files are and where everything is, right? And as you can see, it says hello world right now. So we're basically going to change that to say hello Surface Duo world. And you'll note the squigglies. So if you decide to use Xamarin Forms, it's definitely more mature and stable, and you don't see silly things like this. On the Platform.Uno, this is par for the course. Stuff like this, shows up all the time. The best way that I've found to address it to a certain extent is to basically ensure that I'm always running, that it's always, that the view that I have here is always for the UWP as opposed to for Droid or anything. But in this case, as you can see, it's not even making a difference anymore, right? So hopefully what we hope for is that at some point in the future that this will, this kinds of things will be resolved. But for now, there's still problems with it, right? And we're not gonna do anything else. We're not gonna do any programming. So we're just gonna build this now. So in this case, I'm just gonna build it on the Droid. And it's going through and building this up. I found that the build process for the Platform.Uno is a little bit faster. I'm sorry, slower than the build process for with Xamarin Forms. Okay. And as a matter of fact, while we are waiting for this to build, we will actually go ahead and create a new project. And for this new project, we will actually use Xamarin Forms because I just want you to see what the difference between the two approaches are. Okay, so do the same thing, create a new project. So in this case, we want a mobile app, Xamarin Forms. And actually, I'm going to go back and I'm going to switch that to a XAML an Android XAML app. So what's the difference between these two? So when you select a mobile app with Xamarin Forms, what it's actually going to do is it's going to create the same sort of setup that we have here, which is that you're going to have the Mac version and the iOS version and all that. But if you're just really trying to do an Android application, you don't need all that, right? So in this case, that's all we're doing here. So because of that, I'm just going to do that. I would not recommend you doing this because again, you want to build it as generic as possible, right? So Xamarin Surface Duo, okay? And while that's being created, as you can see here, this is done. The build has been successful. So we will now click to deploy it onto the Surface Duo, okay? And we're actually gonna run it on the Surface Duo. So I'm gonna open this guy up so you can see what is happening. The deployment is now started. This does take its time. Part of the reason why it takes its time is because, as mentioned, this is leveraging a technology that has existed in the past and was designed for standard Windows applications. So when you actually build and run this on an Android device, it's got to take those libraries and basically also deploy them onto the device, because those libraries are what's used to render the application, right? So as you can see, this is loaded and we now have our Hello Surface Duo world um, set up. I'm going to open this guy up. Okay. And so here's how it looks right now. So I now have on my Surface Duo opened. And as you can see, it's got it sort of like on one screen, and then the other screen is blank. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to try to create this view. So here's how it shows up here when you do that. But again, remember that on the actual Surface device, there's a line down the middle, right? And that line down the middle might make the experience a little bit disjointed. So let's sort of like show how it would be. Well, you're not going to be able to see it, but I'm going to show I'm going to just make this super long so that it's a little bit easier to see what the issue is. So I'm going to over here, create a rectangle. Okay. So what we've done here is basically just add a rectangle. And I am also going to put both of these inside of what's called a stack panel. A stack panel will basically, a stack panel will basically stack items horizontally or vertically. Horizontally or vertically, in a stack, so one after another. So basically what I have here is I have a stack panel. It still says hello surface world. Maybe I'll add the quick brown fox jumped over lazy dog. Hopefully that's long enough to wrap around onto the other screen. And then what I'll do is I'll show you how it actually looks with a picture on the phone. Okay, so let's run that. There should be very little change here. I just add a little rectangle, with a red line. So basically a red line right underneath the text that's displayed. All right. So as you can see, what's showing up here is hello Surface Duo world. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, and there's a line there. But how it looks on the phone is a little bit different, right? So on the phone, this does not look right? Hello Surface world. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Oh, yeah, there we go. Jumped over the lazy dog. As you can see, the W in brown doesn't show up, which I think is cool actually, that there's sort of like this virtual space that the hinge is taking up, and it's not just kind of like shifting over and the W still shows. So I think that's actually a cool thing here. But as you can see, that's just not, that's not going to cut it. So let's try to fix that and see what we can do, right, to allow this to work as in a dual screen mode. So as you saw there, right, the screen does not properly, when you have like something that spans the whole screen, when you turn to the whole screen, things are not properly mapped, right, by default. We're gonna have to do things on the application side in order to allow that to happen, right? So one of the simplest things we can do is basically split the grid, right? Half down the middle, like split the application down the middle, show one thing on one side, show another thing on the other side, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay. So you do that by adding columns. Okay, so now this grid has two columns, one column for one column for one thing, one column for another thing. We'll now create, let's see, another stack panel. Okay. Okay. So it's green. So what we've done now is we've created two stack panels. One of them says one thing, the other says another thing. And what we ideally want is for one to be on the first column and one to be on the second column, right? So in order to enable that, we basically use some attached properties. And over here, grid.column equals 1, right? So what this is saying is that this content is going to be part of column 1, this content is going to be part of column 2. But one of the other things that we want to do, we don't want it to be ugly and basically going all the way up to the edges. So we do want to create a little bit of a margin between these two so that it's clear that the intent is for the content to be separated. So basically, 10, and we are done. So let's run this and let's see how this now looks. Just opening this up. There we go. So what's happening now is that, as you can see, basically everything is split into two columns. Right now, it's not showing properly because we have everything set up in the one on the for the narrow view. What we ultimately want to do is that when it's in the narrow view, we want it to just show them as maybe in one column, and then when it's in the when it's in the wide view, then we want to show it as two columns. But that's gonna require us to do internal programming. So we will just illustrate the one scenario right now, right? And basically, so now when I take this and split it down the middle, you should see that that is split. Of course, the top part is still causing a little bit of problems. So let's go ahead and fix that by adding some wrapping to it. We just added a text wrapping capability to the actual text blocks because they were not wrapping and they were continuing to go, which is actually a little bit of a bug. That should not be happening. But as you can see now, each one of them is separated out. And if I put this down the middle, that's what shows up, right? So this is now running. If I open this up, and let's look at how it looks actually on phone. So on phone, this is now sort of running as two screens that I can control individually, right? Programmatically, right? So theoretically, I can push a button here and have things happen over here, right? Which is ultimately the kind of flow that we want. So let's go ahead and let's end the video here. And in the next video, it's going to be a continuation of this one. We will basically try to do the same thing, this time using the Xamarin Forms technology.